Hello there. Nowadays we are seeing more and more strong female characters in media, which is always a good thing. People love well-written and likable female characters in their games as well as movies. And when I'm able to create my own character in whatever game I'm playing, I more often than not make a female to play with. Because personally, I think the customization options are always better. And if I'm going to look at someone's ass for hours on end, and I get to choose whether or not it's a male ass or a female ass, I know which one I'm choosing. Some of my favourite female characters in video games are Tifa from Final Fantasy VII, Samus Aran from the Metroid series, and Chun-Li from Street Fighter. But even though I don't actually know very much about her, in my opinion, the number one candidate for most iconic female character in video game history would be the one and only Lara Croft. Tomb Raider 1 released in 1996 when I was 3 years old, and in 2024 the remastered version of Tomb Raider 1, 2 and 3 were put on store shelves. And when I discovered that Tomb Raider 1 was released in 1996 while writing the script, I was actually quite surprised. It's crazy to think that this character's been around for almost 30 years. So let's take a quick trip down memory lane. Back when I was but a wee lad, I remember seeing a big beach towel with Lara Croft on it in the local shop of the village that I lived in. And the picture that they used was of her laying down on the beach in all of her 3D rendered glory. And that, my friends, is the day I realised I like women. Now some of you may be wondering why I decided to play Tomb Raider instead of continuing on with the Pokemon series. Well, after weeks of playing Pokemon Yellow, Crystal and Emerald back to back, writing the scripts, recording the videos, and then having to edit them, let's just say I was getting a little bit sick of thinking about Pikachu. So I decided to travel across the land, searching far and wide for artifacts I don't understand to reveal the power that's inside. Now, I never fully played these games when I was a kid. I tried them once or twice when I was round at a friend's house or whatever, but all I remember doing was running around her mansion's obstacle course, so essentially I did the tutorial over and over again. Because of this, I never actually got to experience what the actual game was like. I had no idea what happened in them or just how weird they actually are. A few years ago I did sit down and play The Rise of the Tomb Raider on the PlayStation 4, and I thought it was brilliant. I fell in love with the character. So for this video I decided to revisit the franchise, and today I'm going to be talking about my first time playing Tomb Raider 1. Okay, so obviously I'm going to be playing the remastered version of the game, so if you were hoping for the original, then I'd recommend reading the titles of videos before you click on them. And if you were hoping to see someone with triangle babbies, well, I had that planned, but it didn't work out. And as always, I will be evaluating these games from the point of view of the average person. That means that this won't be a deep dive or a lore heavy video. It's simply just a critique on the information presented to me within a single playthrough of the game. And to help me break down my thoughts on the game, we're going to be looking at the following 5 things. Number 1, the story and the setting. Number 2, how the game plays. Number 3, the characters. Number 4, how the game performs. And finally, I'll finish everything off by giving my overall opinion in number 5, the conclusion. With that out of the way, I would like to point out that I'm going to try and be vague when and where I can, so there's plenty for you to discover if you ever wanted to play this game yourself. However, there will be spoilers, so you have been warned. Alright then chaps, let's get started, shall we? Before we begin, the remastered versions of Tomb Raider 1, 2 and 3 all come together when you buy them on Steam. And when you boot up the game, the starter menu lets you choose which one you'd like to play by scrolling up and down, but we're only going to be covering Tomb Raider 1 today. You have 3 different main options here: Lara's Home, New Game, and Unfinished Business. You probably should start with Lara's Home, which is a short tutorial, and then after you're finished with that, play the actual game. Although, that's not what I did, but I'll get back to that in a second. Then there's the third option, Unfinished Business. Now from the name, I assumed it would be like a stage selection thing that would allow you to go back and revisit past levels you'd already been to or completed in order to find the little secrets and things you may have missed the first time around. Being that I'm making a video for the game, I thought it would be like quite handy when it came to collecting footage for the video itself. But spoiler, that's not at all what this is. So if some of the footage looks like shit, you know why. As I mentioned before, I didn't play the tutorial to start with, as I thought it would be like an optional little obstacle course people could jump around and do sick parkour stuff in. Pardon fucking me. But after about an hour of playing and jumping up on every raised platform like this, I thought to myself, either I'm shit at this good game or the game itself is shit at being a good game. As it would turn out though, the truth, just like most things, lies somewhere in the middle. So I decided to go back and try it, but honestly, it didn't help all that much. I'll explain why later though, because it actually really pisses me off, and I don't want to be in a bad mood for the rest of this video. Anyway, the game begins with a cutscene depicting a desert in Los Alamos, New Mexico. But before we can marvel at the stunning graphics on display, oh wow, something causes a large explosion which sends some kind of metallic disc flying through the air before crashing into the ground. The camera then pans over the hole left behind by the explosion, and inside is a similar piece of metal to the one we just saw. However, before we are able to speculate on what this could be, lights begin to appear on top of it and the object begins to open, revealing what looks to be a person encased inside. After that, we cut to the present day in the Imperial Hotel in Calcutta, where a man attempts to flirt with someone who turns out to be our protagonist, Lara Croft. I'd like to point out that he drops a magazine in front of her and the headline reads, "Lara stamps out Bigfoot," and this will be relevant later. After this, he goes on to mention that he works for a woman named Jacqueline Natla, who runs a company called Natla Technologies. He whips out a laptop and Natla is already in a Skype call waiting to present Lara with a proposal. She attempts to hire her for a high-paying job, although Lara isn't interested in the money. She only plays for sport. But Natla informs us that she wants to send Lara to Peru, at first enticing her with the rugged terrain, before revealing the real reason she wants her there. Miss Natla is looking for an ancient artifact hidden in the tomb of Qualopec, which is said to contain a massive amount of magical power. And with this information, Lara engages sport mode and accepts the offer. We are then transported to the snowy mountains of Peru by a guide who I've affectionately named Poncho Pete. And P. McSwee here takes us to a massive sealed door at the side of the mountain. Equipped with a rope and a grappling hook, Lara wastes no time climbing to the top. And once she's there, she presses a hidden button which makes a large stone structure open, revealing a dark cave. Although, inside and waiting are a pack of hungry wolves who quickly pounce on Poncho Pete. Lara cuts the rope supporting her, sending her hurtling to the ground. She does a superhero landing and shoots all the wolves in order to save him. But it's too late. Poncho Pete has perished. Leaving Lara to face this challenge alone, she enters the dark cave and the doors close behind her. The only way to go is forward. And that is our introduction to the game. Honestly, there's not much story here. All we know is we've been asked by a lady named Jacqueline Natla to go to Peru and find an ancient artifact with no context as to why. It's not exactly an edge of your seat kind of plot, but with the intrigue surrounding the explosion at the beginning and my newfound desire to avenge Sir Poncho, I pressed on. Our first stage is set inside the caves. a snow-covered cavern that leads to an underground ancient ruin. Now this place is essentially an in-game tutorial that introduces you to the game mechanics and the challenges you're going to be facing along the way, such as traps, puzzles, combat, and the terrain. It really is a well put together opening area, although the main challenge you're going to be facing throughout this game isn't the enemies, it's the controls. Now I'll be going over the controls and the game mechanics in more detail later, although I will say that I hate the way that this game feels to play. The controls are just bad. You can change between tank and the modern controls in the options, however I played with the modern system, but even then I found it extremely difficult to do the simplest of things sometimes. But for now though, let's continue. Proceeding through this level, we face off against a few enemies and figure out a couple of small puzzles. One cool thing about these games is that at the end of every stage, we get a summary on screen covering how we did. And this tells you how long you took to finish the stage, how many secrets you found, how many enemies you killed, etc, etc. This is useful for keeping track of your progress, and for completionists, this will be like freshly brewed crack. But for me, the further I got into the game, the less I cared. Our next stage is the city of Vilcabamba. And right off the bat, we are ambushed by some wolves, but try as they might, they do not take me down like they did Poncho Pete. In this area, we are met with bats, a bear, more hungry wolves, an underwater area, and a couple of door puzzles. Simple, right?
No.
Well, not for me at least, because I must admit that I ran around this area for about 45 minutes looking for a key, and I had no fucking idea what I was missing. For the life of me, I could not find it, and I was beginning to get well and truly P-worded off. So I turned to the saviour of many casual playthroughs, Google. And Google showed me where it was. And what made it worse, I had ran past it multiple times. And with the last key that I needed for the opening area, I carried on through the stage. I would like to make a point in saying that this was an important part of my experience with this game, because this point right here, like on the second level no less, I realised that this game was actually going to be a little bit more difficult than I first thought it would be. Not in the sense that the enemies were difficult or the puzzles, if you can call them that, are out of reach for smooth-brained me, but in the fact that you actually need to pay close attention to all your surroundings and make a mental map of where things are, because you're going to need to run back and forward a lot. You should understand that, like, I consider myself to be a somewhat competent gamer. Like, I've been gaming for 25 plus years. I beat all the Dark Souls games. My favourite genre is survival games. One of my favourite games of all time is DayZ. I even enjoy Kenshi for some reason. I was even the guy that my friends hated to play against because they knew exactly what was about to happen. But here I was, stuck for 45 minutes, looking for a key in the second stage of Tomb Raider 1. And I was embarrassed, and no one was watching me other than God and all of my dead relatives.
Disgusting.
Truly pathetic. And then that's when I realised something. Making these videos had me rushing to the finish, and I was getting easily frustrated when I was even slightly stuck or lost in some way. So I decided to slow down and really take it all in, like I was supposed to. It's what I set out to do when I started this channel. And I promise you, that was the last time I checked Google for this game. Moving forward, we kill more wolves, encounter bullshit traps that remind me to save regularly, there's more underwater sequences, a hungry bear, and another door puzzle. And finally, I finished the second stage. Next up, we have the Lost Valley. And here we have to try and navigate our way past a strong current of water. One that if we fall into will drag us along with it and throw us from a small waterfall, making us have to climb back up and try all over again. But once we make our way past it, we find some cogs attached to a wall that has a few pieces missing. So I expertly deduce that our task is to find them. Also close by, we find the second weapon in our arsenal, next to the remains of what probably was just an explorer just like Lara. And this addition is the shotgun. Throughout the game, we will come across ammunition for different weapons that we don't already own, letting the player know that we're going to find new weapons that make our journey easier, but most importantly, make us look extremely cool. Anyway, searching for the missing cogs leads us to a large open jungle-like area, and this is where the game takes a teeny tiny tonal shift, because instead of wolves trying to kill us here, we're actually hunted by dinosaurs. Many people like myself who have limited knowledge of the franchise may be quite surprised about this because, like I said, I've only played one of the newer titles, and I can't remember anything supernatural in it other than this sequence with Baba Yaga and Howl's Moving Castle. But from what I remember, that wasn't real. Like, I think it was like a hallucination or something. But a couple of velociraptors aren't going to stand in Lara's way. She f***ed up Bigfoot, and surely there's nothing bigger than Bigfoot around the corner. Wink. Well, of course there is. The king of Jurassic Park himself, the Tyrannosaurus Rex. It starts off pretty intimidating. It just runs around the corner without warning, and I guess this fight is supposed to be difficult, but mine's kind of bugged out and I just shot it to death while I was stuck on a plant or something. I was kind of hoping for a cool thing to talk about in this video and it turned out to be a fucking joke. Surely there won't be any more terrible boss fights in the game though. Wink. Anyway, after it's dead, we run around for a bit, kill some more raptors, find the missing cogs, reconstruct the wall puzzle, and this stops the current of water, letting us move on to our next stage, the Tomb of Qualopec. This area is a little different to the last few places we've been, being that it's a large, colourful, ancient temple of some sort. There are large statues and symbols covering the walls that make me think of the ancient Inca tribes or something along those lines. Here we encounter the iconic rolling boulder from Indiana Jones, more raptors, dangerous jumping puzzles, and even wall traps that shoot arrows at you. It can be quite difficult if you aren't keeping an eye on your surroundings, although after you get past all that, we finally make it to the throne room. And sat on the throne is a skeleton guarded by two lizard-like creatures. And if you pay close attention, you'll notice that one of the lizard's heads actually follows you around the room, which is pretty fucking creepy. So I tried to shoot it, but nothing happened. But most importantly, in the centre of the room is what looks to be the ancient artifact that Miss Natla has sent us here to find. And upon removing the artifact from its resting place, the roof of the temple begins to collapse. So I quickly ran out of the room, but the ceiling collapses here too. There was music playing here that made me feel an initial sensation of panic, but I think you could just stand here for as long as you want and you'd be fine. I wasn't actually sure where to go, so I ran back and forward from the throne room to here, just in case I had missed something, and here I started to wonder, was this lizard guy supposed to come to life and attack me? So, in the name of science, I tried to shoot it again, and it died. I have no idea if this was just another bug, like what happened with the T-Rex, but stick around because that's most definitely not the last bug we're going to encounter here. Eventually I ran back the way I came, figured out I have to squeeze my fat ass past this boulder. And then I left the colourful palace behind. Although while we are trying to escape, we are ambushed by a man who begins to shoot at us as we try to swim to safety. It's a little bit rude. So I retreat for a second, equip my shotgun, and blast him into next week. Somehow, with a face full of lead, he survived. And we find out that he is none other, oh fucking, how can you not say na. And we find out that he is none other than the American guy who Miss Natla sent to hire us for the job. He threatens us with a fun Friday night and informs us that there are actually more pieces of the artifact. And Miss Natla has sent some other French guy named Pierre Dupont to find them. Lara, being a greedy bitch, quickly asks where the other pieces are, although he refuses to tell us before trying to make a dash for a gun that Lara dropped, leaving her no choice but to take him out with a badass spinning kick. And the badassery continues. While looking for answers to this mystery, Lara makes her way to Natla Technologies by pulling off a stunt that would be right at home in the Batman Arkham games. Breaking into the building and finding Miss Natla's office, she uncovers some secrets about the ancient trinkets that Natla is trying to find. She finds out that beneath a monastery named St. Francis's Folly, there are rumours of someone... She finds out that beneath a monastery named St. Francis's Folly, there are rumours of someone named Teotihuacan being buried there. And this Teotihuacan was apparently one of the legendary rulers of the lost continent of Atlantis. Very fancy. Not only that, this Teokan holds in his possession another piece of the artifact we found in Qualipek's tomb. All in, there are 3 different pieces formerly possessed by 3 rulers of Atlantis, and we have one of them. Hungry for answers, Lara turns on sport mode once again and begins to track down the rest of the pieces. Which leads us to our next destination, St. Francis's Folly in Greece, although it would seem that Pierre has arrived here before us. So, with the clock ticking, we have to try and find the remaining pieces before he does. The monastery is home to a completely different aesthetic to the previous areas we visited, along with brand new enemies. This time around we have lions, monkeys, French people and crocodiles. Also, the jumping puzzles and overall difficulty of the enemies has increased significantly. That combined with the terrible controls, you're going to be hearing this a lot. So get used to it. In this large chamber of death, we have 4 different rooms we must enter in order to progress through the stage, and each room is labelled with the name of a different mythological figure. One is for Damocles, one for Thor, another for Neptune, and the last room is for Atlas. All of these rooms have different challenges you must overcome in order to obtain 4 keys, and once you collect all of them, you can unlock a big door at the bottom of the chamber to progress further into our next stage, the Colosseum. But let's wait just a second. In order to not spoil things still to come, I'm going to be much more vague from this point forward. I already feel like I've gone into too much detail this far, and like I said, I want to leave enough untouched ground for people to discover themselves. And in all honesty, if I was to include all the details on what goes down in every stage, this video would be long as and I can't be arsed with all that editing. After all we've done so far, we do learn that the artifacts contain extreme amounts of magical power, although we still don't know why Miss Snatler wants them. I do find it strange that after hiring us to do the job to find them, she would then send the American guy to kill us after we completed the task. We are clearly capable of helping her find the rest, but for some reason she wants to get rid of us. It's like the stereotypical evil villain trope, like at first they work with you and then betray you when you're no longer useful to them. It's a bit played out at this point, but it is what it is. With all that being said, this game's story is broken up into 4 different locations. The first being Peru, the second is Greece, the third is in Egypt, and lastly we make our way to Atlantis. Kind of. Each place is split up into a few different stages and will have us coming up against harder enemies and more challenging terrain the further we go. So I'm just going to give you a quick rundown on the main events that occur. The rest of Greece has us killing half the world's lying population in order to track down a Frenchman who we then also have to kill in order to obtain the next piece of the artifact. And I only feel bad about one of those things. We are then treated to a visually stunning cutscene where Lara makes some beautiful facial expressions and we see a bit more of the backstory of the 3 rulers of Atlantis. Next, we make our way to Egypt. Egypt is pretty much how you'd expect it to be. There's a ton of sand and walls that have hieroglyphics on them. Anakin Skywalker would love it here. But there are some genuinely cool visuals, including the Sphinx and the underwater statues of Anubis and Horus. All that's missing is a statue of Yami Yugi holding the Millennium Puzzle. Also, here we have to take on new enemies like panthers and the totally normal and not weird lizard men. Oh, and the flying lizard men. Oh, and the half-horse, half-lizard centaur lizard men. Yeah, after doing Brendan Fraser's job for him, we eventually find our way to the last piece of the artifact. Christ, that was a lot of references. And with one slow walk to the finish line later, we finally have all 3 pieces of the puzzle safely tucked away in our bag. It's now time for us to leave this place behind and live happily ever after.
No.
It's never that simple, is it? Once we make it outside, there are 3 men waiting for us with guns. Outnumbered and outgunned, they restrain Lara before Jacqueline Natla reveals herself. She then has her men search us for the treasure, and with all 3 pieces of the artifact now in her hands, she orders her men to kill us. But Lara being Lara, she isn't going down that easy. No, she makes a grand escape by jumping off a cliff into a river below. And as Natla and her goons try to escape, Lara hops on her motorbike and begins to chase them to the coast. Spotting them as they sail away on a boat, we ride our bike off a ramp at the water's edge and make an epic jump about 2 feet towards them, and one of the goons hears the commotion, but for some reason they're just convinced it was a big fish. The dialogue in this game is truly next level. With the 2 men distracted, Lara sneaks onto the boat with a wet t-shirt and a welcome amount of jiggle physics. Welcome back. Before hitching a ride with them to our last area of the game, Atlantis. What? Not what you were expecting? Well, technically we aren't in Atlantis yet. I don't think. No, this area is called Natla's Mines. So I think, nay I believe, this was Natla's attempts to reach Atlantis, or at least a small part of it. Here we make our way through the caves and find ourselves going toe to toe with a cowboy who is trying to stop us from going any further. And that's when I noticed something. We don't have our guns anymore. In the previous cutscene where Natla and her boys ambushed us in Egypt, they also took our guns from us. So I scramble around a little bit, fall into the lava below a few times, and finally, with an extra large dose of luck, I made my way past him. As we head deeper into the mines, with no warning, the strangest thing in this game happens. One of Natla's henchmen ambushes us. Wait for it. On a skateboard. What the fuck is going on? For context, this game includes magical amulets, dinosaurs, Atlantis, French people, and lizard men. But the weirdest thing to happen in this game, Tony Hawk appears on his skateboard and tries to kill me. Anyway, making it past Mr. Kickflip, we run into Mr. Trenchcoat. And after one frustratingly shit puzzle later, we end up in our next area. Here we get an in-game cutscene where Miss Natla flashes a little bit of cleavage while using the fully assembled artifact to power some kind of device. This device causes the mountain outside to fall apart, revealing some sort of ancient golden pyramid underneath its crust. And finally, we made it to Atlantis. What? Not what you were expecting? Me neither. This place is a literal house of horror. The whole pyramid seems to be one kind of living organism. The walls and the floors are all covered in muscles and flesh and other disgusting things found inside living creatures. Things that I personally don't like thinking about. There's a shit ton of lizard people who are trying to kill you, and the environment is trying its best to do the same. However, if you do manage to make your way past all of this, you will make it to the device that Natla powered up earlier using the amulet. And once you go to grab it, you are granted with a vision of the past. This vision shows us the 3 rulers of Atlantis, although one of them is restrained in some sort of next level BDSM device. Who would have thought the people of Atlantis were so kinky? Well, I guess it all makes sense when we realise that the person in the restraints is none other again, oh my god. But it all makes sense when we realise that the person in the restraints is Jacqueline Natla herself. The other 2 rulers, Qualapec and Teokan, have condemned Natla to eternal imprisonment for misusing her powers to create an army and invading the other 2. Or something. Like, I watched this cutscene a couple of times to try and understand just what the fuck is going on, and I'm still unsure. It's both overly exposition-y and not very clear at the same time about what it's trying to tell the viewer. Maybe you get what they're trying to say, but you can probably tell from looking at me that I'm not the sharpest tool in the shed. They say that she robbed them of their power and then used her power to create a freak factory within the Golden Pyramid. And I think the freaks that they're referring to are the lizard men, because the camera pans over one of them when they mention this, but the lizard guy is obeying the orders of the other 2 also. Anyway, the metal device thing at the beginning of the game with the person encased inside was Natla, although we don't actually get an explanation for who caused the explosion and helped her escape. She then hired us and other treasure hunters to find the 3 pieces of the amulet for her so she can power up the old Golden Pyramid again in order to carry on doing whatever the fuck she was doing before she was imprisoned. After we get released from this trance, we do get some kind of explanation about what's going on though. Natla appears and explains to Lara that she wants to tamper with evolution by creating new creatures to cause people to have to fight back, grow stronger, and advance technologically, because she believes that humanity has become weak. And without asking too many questions, Lara's like, nah, and then tries to put a bullet in her brain. She then attempts to tackle us to her death, but Lara manages to grab hold of a ledge, saving herself, while Natla falls below, presumably to her end instead. And this is where we find out what Natla was planning to unleash upon the world. A massive creature breaks out of an egg, and it kinda looks like one of those giants from Attack on Titan, but with no legs. And just like every other living creature we've come across in this game, you have to kill it by running in a circle, shooting it. It's safe to say that this game's strong point is not its combat or its storytelling. After we deal with this massive abomination, we destroy the amulet and attempt to escape the pyramid. But just as we're about to leave, Natla appears now with a fresh pair of wings, looking like Rouge the Bat, and after a lackluster final boss battle, we finally take her down for good. We make a narrow escape, jump on the boat that Natla brought here, and sail away into the sunset. And we did it. We survived. The credits roll, and that's the end of the game. Before I comment on the story, I want to bring your attention to something I spoke about at the beginning of the video. Earlier I mentioned this thing in the menu called Unfinished Business and how I thought it would be a stage selection thing. So once I was done with the story, I tried it, and it actually turned out to be added content for a later release of the original Tomb Raider game called Tomb Raider Gold. In this expansion, you somehow make your way back to the golden pyramid that exploded in the last cutscene to really stick the last few nails in the coffin. I read that it's not technically canon, and it's not required for you to play in order to get the full story of Tomb Raider 1, so don't worry if you don't bother with it. Honestly, I was actually pretty disappointed about this because I thought it would let me go back and play the stages I'd already been to before for better footage of each area, but instead it's like a hardcore survival sequence that consists of 4 extra levels, which has you start with no weapons other than your pistols, and you also have no healing items because you have to try and find them all throughout the expansion. After trying and dying multiple times, I said, you know what, enough is enough. By this point, I was well and truly fed up playing this game. I have no idea why the developers would create an expansion for this, only for it to focus on, in my opinion, the worst aspect of the original game, like the combat. It's just not worth my time to suffer through. The story was shit, the gameplay was shit, and the graphics, even though they have been remastered, are... what's the word I'm looking for? It's shit. The graphics are still shit. You can also play the game on New Game Plus if you want. I can't tell if anything changes because I didn't try it either, but it is there. Also, you unlock different outfits to wear for New Game Plus and the expansion once you finish the main story, which is pretty cool, but I'll go over them a little later. Even though I didn't enjoy the game, I am glad I played through it. Lara Croft in the Tomb Raider series is truly iconic. Like, she is a monumental figure in video games history, and for that fact alone, I pushed through to the end. But honestly, there's very little chance I'll ever return to this game in the future. And now that we are done talking about the story, let's move on to our second section of today's video and talk about number 2, how the game plays. Oh, I need a break because my arm is sore, oh my god. Playing Tomb Raider 1 initially was pretty cool, and it was a total blast of nostalgia for me. It truly did remind me of my childhood, but not in a good way. It reminded me that I had little to no control over what I did, and I got unfairly punished for just existing. Its clunky controls killed me way more than any of the enemies did. The auto aim is terrible, you jump faster than you run, and you swim across the top of water slower than an old lady at a community pool on a Sunday afternoon. When I first booted up the game, I thought, wow, I'm not going to enjoy this. So I played for like 10 minutes, checked the options, and found out I can actually choose between tank controls and modern controls, which is a nice touch, I'll give it that, although it still isn't enough. Even with the modern controls, I still had a ton of difficulty doing simple things, and this game is primarily about traversing obstacles and killing enemies before they kill you. The tutorial is a great idea. I love the fact that you're in our house for it. It truly is unique in that regard. It also adds a little bit of backstory for Lara. We are able to tell that her and her family are extremely wealthy, and she doesn't necessarily have to do what she does. She clearly just does all this tomb raiding for the thrill and excitement, which I find pretty charming. But ultimately, this introduction is pretty subpar if you ask me. Lara talks to you throughout the tutorial about what buttons to press in order to perform different actions, although she doesn't tell you which button is which. First we have
use the D-pad to go into the music room.
Simple enough, but some people might not know what this is nowadays. I can't remember the last time I heard a newer game talk about using the D-pad, which is the directional buttons on the controller, if for some reason you didn't know that. Then we have
press the jump button.
Okay, again, it's easy to figure out, but again, at no point does it tell you which button this is. My next issue is this here. She says,
now press it again and quickly press one of the directions and I'll jump that way.
I tried it a few times, although I never got a follow-up to say if I was doing it correctly. I think maybe because I was using the modern controls, I wasn't doing exactly what the game wanted me to do. So I switched to the tank controls, and as you can see, I was able to do flips and cool shit like that, although I still got no confirmation on whether or not this was correct. So I just moved on. Next we have
run up to a crate and while still pressing forward, press action and I'll vault up onto it.
Now the only reason I knew what the action button was is through trial and error while I was playing the actual game. I feel like if they had added a little prompt at the bottom of the screen somewhere to show you what button you have to press would have made this whole section much more accessible. Then we get this.
When I want to be careful, I walk. With the walk button down,
Then,
if you want to look around, press and hold the look button.
now I've looked at my controller long and hard, and I can't see a fucking walk or a look button. Now look, I know that this dialogue comes from the original game, and there was a manual that came with it that had these buttons explained for the player, but we don't have that here. I actually bought a copy of the original game just to fucking find out, but in this remaster, which I got on Steam, there is no manual, and I don't actually think you get one if you buy the game physically either. Okay, let's move on to the actual game. You have to hold the action button to pick stuff up and to use switches, levers and move objects, and this isn't shown during the tutorial either. And then there's combat. You shoot using the right trigger button and it's always all aim, but trying to shoot enemies that are moving around quickly is terrible. And again, they don't introduce you to the combat in the tutorial. I feel like a little area like a shooting range in her house would have improved the introduction to the game. One where she would tell you how to pick up a gun that is laying on the floor before giving you instructions on how to shoot. You'd really be killing two birds with one stone here. It seems so simple, and yet I wonder how this kind of thing was overlooked. And that's not the only issues I have with this game. Let's say you finish the stage and we're halfway through the next one, but then for whatever reason you died. Come on, you're gonna die. And if you didn't manually save your game during this new stage that you're in, you will be booted back to the last stage or wherever you saved last, because there is no autosave. This happened to me a couple of times, and let me tell you, it is infuriating. So also, when you try to save, be careful, because the menu opens up in a way that if you aren't paying attention, will have you press load game instead of save game. And this can happen really, really easily. That for an action adventure puzzle game, this is more like a test in patience before it is a test of logic. It's not a complicated game in any stretch of the word. It's really, really quite simple. If it controlled better, I would have finished it in half the time. The mechanics are very simple too. You pause the game to heal or change weapons. We have small and large healing packs. The small ones heal about a quarter of your health and the large ones heal the whole thing. You find them scattered around, and if you're smart with them, you won't run out. And we also find just enough ammo to get us through each dangerous situation that we find ourselves in. But ammo only really matters when it comes to the guns you find. Your starter weapons, the pistols, have unlimited ammo, although the drawback is that they are a little weaker. This is both convenient and necessary for you to progress, and I know I'm being a little bit nitpicky here, but why the fuck are there random stacks of modern ammunition scattered around ancient Egyptian ruins, and even worse, in an even older pyramid in Atlantis? It kinda takes you out of the moment when you think about it too hard. Also, the entire layout and how you progress through the locations we find ourselves in feels like a game. It doesn't feel like I'm actually in an ancient structure. and because of that, it was hard for me to get immersed in the experience. As an entire package, the game plays pretty poorly. It seems to be a remaster in visuals alone. I didn't play the original, so I can't tell you if there are any quality of life changes other than the implementation of the modern controls. So if you want to know, try it for yourself or check somewhere else on YouTube. I'm sure there's a video someone's made about all the changes. Anyway, before I become dehydrated from crying about this game too much, let's move on to our next section of the video, number 3, the characters. Even though this game has us playing as Lara Croft, the Tomb Raider, we never really learn anything about Lara Croft, the Tomb Raider. Lara is a strong, independent English woman, and there's nothing I like more than strong, independent English women. Although we learn more about the antagonist, Jacqueline Natla, and her story over anyone else. Maybe the game should have been called Banished from Atlantis, featuring Jacqueline Natla. Also, the game as a whole doesn't have a lot of characters. So let's go over them and I'll try my best to explain who they are from what I learned throughout my playthrough. Starting with our main character, Lara Croft. All we really know is that she is some kind of treasure hunter, she has a big mansion, and she is also the woman responsible for either killing or capturing your mum. I mean Bigfoot. Next is Miss Jacqueline Natla. She is an ancient Atlantean who was once a ruler of the Lost Continent before being banished from her home for being a bit of a bitch. Then there's Larson, a stereotypical American man who works for Jacqueline Natla, and we don't learn anything more about him. Then we have Poncho Pete, loyal, funny, charming, sexy, and the kind of man we should all strive to be. Rest in peace, King. Next is Pierre Dupont, a French treasure hunter who is French. I'm not sure if you picked up on that, and he is very dead. There's another American guy, but this one is a special cowboy hat edition. Next we have Trenchcoat Man. There's not much to say about him, but he is referred to as Bald Enemy in the Steam achievements, which I find quite funny. We of course have Tony Hawk. He has a long history in the skateboarding world, and he even has his own game franchise, one that I might cover one day. And finally we have Teokan and Qualopec, the other two rulers of Atlantis, who are also very dead. And as I said at the beginning of the video, there isn't much story here in terms of plot, but there's even less information regarding who our main cast is. This game primarily is just an action-adventure game, and that's fine. Not all games have to have a long and detailed story, which makes my job here a lot easier. But the game centers around this really cool character who they fail to tell us anything about. Lara has an extremely simple yet strong character design. It's not hard to see why she became so popular, particularly with young men at the time. And as much as I too enjoy looking at pretty things, I just wish there was a little bit more backstory put in place for her. Hopefully we found out more about who she is when we cover the other games. Along with Lara's good looks, her voice is also very easy to listen to. And I think the voice actress did a great job portraying a high society woman with a flair of common attitude. The rest of the cast isn't as good, however. Natla isn't the worst, but I think they'll right and let her down a bit. And I think the same goes for everyone else. The voice actors have all implemented a lot of over-the-top character into their performance, but there's only so much you can do with bad writing. And that's pretty much it for the characters, I guess. I really can't think of anything else to say about them. So let's move on to number 4, how the game performs. One thing I haven't talked about yet is this unique feature where if you press the little button on the Xbox controller that has 3 lines, this one right here, you can seamlessly switch between modern and classic graphics. An inclusion like this is completely unnecessary, although the fact that they went through the trouble to implement it is very cool. It allows people to choose whether they want an old... Fucking hell, that was the most Scottish I've sounded in years. It allows people to choose whether they want an old school experience, just as it was back in the day with the old graphics and the tank controls, or an enhanced version for people like me who want to experience these games as well, but with better graphics and slightly better controls. Graphically, what they have pulled off in the remaster, it's okay. A lot of the environments still look like Minecraft, being that it's all blocks, but the character models look nice and the lighting and environmental set dressing looks decent also. The same cannot be said, however, about the cutscenes. I mean, just look at Natla's face here. I do wonder why they chose to leave out the cutscenes when remastering this game, as they aren't very long and there's only a handful in the entire game. The models used in the original cutscenes are horrendous. They are clearly a product of their time, but it does kind of hinder the experience going from new improved models during the gameplay to whatever the fuck this is. Also, apparently there is a photo mode for the game. I only discovered that while writing the script, as I had a look at the Steam achievements and it clearly says open photo mode, but I never found it and apparently not very many people did either. Which, to be honest, is probably a good thing for me because I spend far too much time in photo modes in games as it is. I know, I'm very talented. Although the Steam achievement tracker thing could be wrong, as I don't think it is working correctly. For example, I finished the game start to finish minus the expansion unfinished business. So why don't I have the trophy for finishing the first chapter? Or the one for making one of Qualipix's guardians fall down? Did I not do that correctly? That whole sequence did feel a bit off, like maybe it was bugged or something. And spoiler I guess, this one you get for becoming Golden Lara after stepping on Midas's hand. Like, look, I clearly did that. There's a few more that I feel like I might have did, but who cares about trophies anyway? I'm just letting you know as a warning that things didn't always work correctly in regards to this game. From the T-Rex glitching, to Lara flying into the sky while fighting bats, and even guns floating in midair. Sometimes enemies would be stuck in walls and other times animations wouldn't work as I think they were intended to. And let's not forget the magical floating boulder. Also, while playing the game, I realised that when pulling levers and pressing switches, if a little cutscene appears showing a door open, don't move. Like, don't move your character. You can move if you want, because your character can still move around while this is happening on screen and can potentially lead to you falling to your death. And if this is happening and you are being attacked by enemies, they can still hurt you and again potentially kill you if you aren't careful. Now, I didn't expect to see so many bugs and glitches in this game, being that it's a remaster released in 2024 of a very famous franchise. I know making video games is difficult and I can only imagine remastering one is a pain in the arse also, and I'm not in any way saying I could do better. I'm just pointing out all the parts I don't like or that didn't work the way I think they were supposed to. Also, I'm not making fun of the development team or anything like that. I'm sure they worked hard to get this all to work and were probably very passionate about doing it. But I did pay money for this, and I'm not the only person that had issues with it either. And I doubt any of these problems will get fixed because in February of 2025, they released the next 3 remastered games in this franchise, Tomb Raider 4, 5 and 6. Then after you finish the main story, you unlock the ability to change Lara's outfit while playing the game again on New Game Plus or in the expansion Unfinished Business. So let's have a quick look at them before we wrap things up here. First, we get Classic Lara with sunglasses. Oh, wait. And you can use these sunglasses with all the outfits we are about to discuss. Then there's Training 1. This is the outfit she wears in her house during the tutorial. Then next up we have Classic 2. This is Lara's outfit from the second game, I believe. It's just a classic one with a little bit more skin on display. The third new look is Training 2, a more army inspired outfit using green and brown instead of the classic blue and brown. Then we get Lara in a wetsuit for some reason. This is probably from one of the follow-up games, so stick around to find out. Fifth, we have Bomber Jacket Lara, and I like this one a lot. I think she looks pretty cool, although a big warm jacket and tiny short shorts is a very interesting choice. Next, we have something special for all you perverts out there, Bathrobe Lara. I don't know what to say about this one, it's just Lara in a bathrobe. Sixth, we get Training 3, taking inspiration from Training 2. This outfit leans more into the army look with camel trousers this time around. Next we have Nevada. This is essentially the same as Training 3, although now we have blue camo instead of brown. 8th on our list is Pacific Lara, showcasing her range and creativity when it comes to fashion. Now she's wearing the same outfit as normal, but this time it's white and green. A personal favourite of mine is Catsuit Lara. I'm not really into bondage, but if Lara came round to my house wearing a skin-tight black leather suit, I wouldn't say no. 9th is Antarctica Lara, sporting her best winter outfit. Lara shows us here she's ready and able to deal with any situation, whatever the weather. Up next we have Classic Lara, but with a little bit of battle damage. She looks like Spider-Man after he just fought the Green Goblin. And finally, have you ever wanted to go treasure hunting while wearing your Sunday best? Well, this game's got you covered with Vegas Lara, showing us her terrible taste in fashion with this little leopard print number. There is a decent range of outfits to choose from, granted some of them are just the same thing reskinned, but I appreciate the inclusion to add a little bit of colour to your next run through of the game. Performance wise, this game isn't anything special and the controls let it down in a big way. There is little to no music either, which honestly isn't that big of an issue. In these kind of adventure games, the ambient sounds are more than enough. Although every now and then, you'll be hit with some music signifying enemies are about to attack, or just a nice little jingle that lasts for a very short period of time while you're exploring. The music when enemies approach isn't synced to the gameplay, however, because you can kill them all before the music finishes and it just keeps on playing, which left me confused about whether I had missed one or if there was still more to come. Anyway, I think I'm about done with this video, so let's move on to the last section, number 5, the conclusion. All in, Tomb Raider 1's remaster feels incomplete. And why remaster the graphics during gameplay but not the cutscenes? Why not add button prompts during the tutorial for a smoother introduction for people new to these games? And why did I find so many bugs and glitches in a relatively short playthrough? As I progressed, I naturally got better at combat and traversing the terrain, although it was far from what I expected it would be coming into it. And maybe that's on me. It wasn't the worst gaming experience I've ever had, like it did have its good moments, but you can tell from the start that this game's visuals, mechanics and controls have aged extremely poorly. I would like to point out I am glad I played through the game. Like I said, the Tomb Raider franchise is a massive piece of gaming history, and I think anyone who enjoys games but hasn't played older titles such as this is doing themselves a massive disservice for not engaging with at least one of them. Tomb Raider has grown significantly since it started. For example, it has movies, merchandise, games, comics, and I'm sure there's even a Netflix show. So if you're interested in the character, there's something out there for everyone. Being that Tomb Raider 1 was the first game of the series, it feels like it wasn't sure of what its identity should be. It goes from innocently adventurous at the beginning to borderline survivor horror by the end. It doesn't really feel to me that the game achieved what it set out to do. It's like a mixture of adventure, puzzle, mystery and horror game all rolled into one, and it doesn't do any of them all that well. Also, the lack of backstory regarding the main character is a bit of a shame, as we don't get to know who we are playing as. Why does Lara care so much about what she is doing? How is she able to do all of these amazing stunts? And why isn't she surprised to find lizard men and dinosaurs? But most importantly, how the fuck did she get enough money to live in a giant mansion? I want one. I do realise it's a remaster of a game made in 1996, and 3D was new in the gaming sphere at that time, so more focus was probably needed in that department. I just wish we got a little more information on Lara as a person and her motivations for doing what she does, being that it is the first entry into the series. Anyway, let's get to the important question: do I think Tomb Raider 1 was an average experience? Well, that's a complicated question to answer for this one. In 1996, yes, definitely, Tomb Raider 1 would have been up there with the games from back then. But a remastered version released in 2024?
No.
Unfortunately, I'm going to have to agree with Lara on this one. I think the remaster is a below average experience. Honestly, I think the game is a bit disappointing and I didn't really enjoy my time with it. Although, for whatever reason, I am looking forward to seeing where she goes from here. The next game we are going to be covering is Tomb Raider 2 Remastered, and I'm excited to play it and see what improvements were made. Which is one major plus for this game, is that it comes bundled with the next two in the series. So for your money, you are getting a decent deal. It is as tedious as it can be. I do think going back to older games such as this is very important. It lets you further appreciate what you have now. Games have come such a long way in an incredibly short amount of time, and as a whole I hope they continue to improve, just like I hope Lara and her franchise continues to grow and evolve as time goes on. I have no idea how to rate this one, and I don't think it really matters in the grand scheme of things, but I'm going to give Tomb Raider 1 Remastered 4 kickflips out of 10. If you enjoyed the video, please consider subscribing to the channel for more average experiences. I'm going to be covering games new and old that I've always wanted to play, or games I've already played that I've always wanted to talk about. So if you'd like to join me on this quest, you're more than welcome. Until next time though, if you're able, remember to go outside sometimes. It's good for you. Peace.